Well, this might be a long video, so I apologize right off the bat, but there's going to be a lot of information that's going to go on here. So, on my very first rebuild that I did on a Slant 6, the first thing I always do is look at the oiling system. We'll go into that later. So I wanted to try something other than the factory pump. So I bought this pump, which is not a high volume pump. You can see by the part number right there. It is an M66C, which is just your standard replacement pump, which is obviously still bigger here. We'll go into all that on another video. But this is what I found my problem was. So what I did is I got a rebuild kit, and I didn't want to run the factory style chain, so I got this double roller aftermarket chain that everybody seems to get. So I got that and I put it on, and I was noticing that my timing was starting to go all over the place. They're a little erratic because it's the plastic gear on this, doesn't fit really tight anyways. But man, this thing was starting to really move. And then I started to pull it out, and I looked at this camshaft, and if you look here, maybe you can see it, but it started to feather. And I was just like, man, what the hell's going on here? You can see it there. It's starting to feather. And then on the gear here itself, it was starting to feather also. So I was like, I went on the forums, and you look and you see what's going on and what people are talking about. Let's see if you can get a better video of this here. It's hard to see, but it really is on there. It feathered. Yeah, there you go. Okay. And then obviously this feathered too. So then I started looking into things, and what I found is that it's not necessarily the oil pump or the high volume pump, and I'll prove that here in just a minute. But what I found is that the double roller timing chain, I'm not going to name the company because I don't do that kind of stuff. I just state facts. And just so you see that there's no parlor tricks here, you can see that is in there and tight. Let me get my little light over here real quick. So you can see that is in there and tight. Why I have a second one of these is because I thought it was my installation that was bad. So I bought another one, or sometimes you just get some bad parts, but the second one did the exact same thing. And as you can see, that timing chain the bottom is up against that tight. It is tight up against there. And then you can see that is tight up against the block. Now, let's go into how this works. On the oil pump is helixed as such, so that way when this thing is under power, when it has oil pressure, doesn't matter if you accelerate or deaccelerate, as long as there's oil to pressure to the pump and you have oil going into it, it's going to create pressure, it's going to create drag. That's going to cause the pump to push up against the block. The block has oiling just for this, so that way it doesn't wear. It's a pretty straightforward system. I mean, obviously these are super reliable, so it works beautiful. Here's where the problem comes into play, and why, for me, this is what I found for me. Now, obviously, this is not for everybody. There's anomalies, but this did cure my problem. So, this is set up, pushed back to 0, 100%. All right, so it's recording now. So that's nice and stable. I'll try not to hit it. But I will... No, I hit it. So as I turn, I want you to notice that. Watch something. I do not have an oil pump in here, so you'll see what's going on here. So now I could keep going around. It could be a longer video, but I'm going to show you what happened here. Now watch. Did you see that? Let's try that again. Let's get this back to 0. Let's do that one more time, just so you can see. Now, if I keep on going, it hovers right around about 100 thousandths as far as out movement. And watch, I will do this again. Now watch, I'm pushing it back. Okay, so what you're seeing here is that this bottom gear is not, it's flush up against the crankshaft, but it's got this little step on it, this little ledge. I'm going to put up a picture of what I had to do to make this thing work. It's got that little ledge. Now what that ledge is doing is it's pushing this thing out. It's pushing this thing out 100 thousandths. And actually, you know what? Watch. I'm going to do it one more time, third time. And I want you to see that I'm not BSing. Okay. Now I'm going to take this off here. See if I can keep it in one continuous shot. And maybe you can see the, I don't know if you can see it. It's hard to see in there, but it is there. There's a gap right there. You can see the gap. So what's happening now is that in the relaxed mode, when this chain is actually just rolling itself over, what's happening is that because this bottom gear is not aligned with this to where this is flush up against the block, the natural state of this wants to run the oil pump, the camshaft out. Okay, so remember that. Camshaft now is being out. Okay, so now that we know that the camshaft is out, and there's a gap there, you can still see that clear gap right there. So what's happening now is if you look down in here, these are not riding exactly in the center of the lobe. They're actually off kilter slightly. And if you look inside here, the gear is now not straight on. It's off to the side slightly. So what happens here, at least this is what's happening for me in every engine that I've built until I've solved this, is that the oil pump has got drag because obviously you're turning oil. So therefore it's a hydraulic pump, so you're pumping oil. So what's happening is that it is trying to push this pump, the pump is trying to pull the camshaft back. Because the oil pump has got a lot of resistance on it, even with a standard or an aluminum one, what's happening is that there's extra wear on the gear because now this is pulling the timing chain back, and now it's trying to, it wants to go forward because of the natural state, but now because there's force on it going this direction, it's going to add extra force now into the gears. Now these things are already kind of sensitive as it is. All right, so moving on to the next step. So now let's move back to the camshafts. So now that we have that and that, so what I started doing is I started experimenting with different camshafts and whatnot. So then what I did is I cut the gear. There'll be a picture of that. I'll put it up again. I cut the bottom gear to the amount which was 115 thousandths. So that way when it rotated, it ran it flat up against there. Then I ran another M66C. And if you notice, very little wear, perfectly right in the center, right where it needs to be. Then everybody says, oh, you can't run a high volume pump at all. You just can't run it. They just won't work. Well, that is an M66 HV, high volume pump. Now let's look here. I ran this for, oh, how much did I run this? This one was, I'll have to look at my records, but I think it was about 10,000 miles of wear. And there is nothing on there. That is a nice polished, clean surface. Let's get my camera here. That is a nice polished surface and whatnot. Now at the time I worked for a cam company, so I could get camshafts reground and whatnot. I was changing camshafts and trying to figure out the best camshaft. And so then here's the high volume pump. And then this thing runs beautiful. In fact, I could put this back on anything. It just doesn't have this little gap here. Then the last one that I ran was this one here. I ran this one for almost 30,000 miles. Remember, this was my daily driver. And this was the last one that I took out. And then what I did is I ran it on one side. Then I made a, and once again, this doesn't have the extra gap here, and you'll see why in a second. I made a custom tool, so that way I could, this is basically just a ball joint puller. I made this little piece here, so you can put that on there and then pull these gears off. What I tried to do is I was like, well, maybe everyone said that these gears are only protected on one side and not the other side. So what I did is I took the gear off and I flipped it around. It didn't make any difference. It ran just fine. So I tried that. Then I was trying to find, now right now I'm currently running an aluminum pump in this one right now. And because I run an oil squirter on the gear, because I thought at first the oil squirter was kind of, the issue here. So I was experimenting with different oil squirters. One block had an oil squirter, the other ones didn't. So I was kind of running around. Now these ones here, this is an M66. So this is an early version, got this off of eBay. It has the extra little port on it because all my blocks now have the oil squirter for the gear. And I did all this and this testing without the oil squirter. Obviously, you can see that there's no way that could be there. And this was done on the other two blocks. I have three Slant Sixes that can currently run. One of them at this time had the oil squirter. Now all three of them have the oil squirter. So I can't really run any of these oil pumps at this time. All right, so this is the gear that was just on that engine. I just took it off. And if you look here, you can see that this is the way they come. They're basically, they do this so that way it gets off all the burrs on it. So let's flip this over. And if you can see it here, you can see where there's one link and that link, that link, that link. You can see where that has been clearly cut and ground down. And that is the force of it trying to pull itself forward. You can see it right there. You can actually see it really good. And what that is the timing chain links. You can see on the timing chain link how one link is in and one link is out. So that would be the in link and that would be the out link. So you can see how much force was being actually ground down on that thing. And that was because the oil pump's trying to pull it back. This thing's trying to go forward. And this thing rarely ran up against there. You could barely see any wear marks. This is a side note on timing chains. With the spring pressures and the RPMs that you're running, you really don't need this. You can get away with one of these. Now, I bought these extra ones here just to, when I was trying to figure out this whole oiling issue, as far as standoff here, I put these on, checking with spring and timing chain to see, hey, is this a thing or is this just because of these style or whatnot? But for this engine, and you're going to be just fine with a single roller, one of these style chains. So I hope this helps. This is kind of my conclusion with what I've done and what seemed to work for me. And like I said, once again, this is probably the 7th time I'm saying it. I know it's long-winded. I apologize. But this is oh, you can actually see that thing, there's no tricks. That is up against there. Anyways, there it is.